let me not take any more time than I need to so that I can turn it over to Pat Akos and Talisha Adams from the University of Tennessee. Pat, many of you know as a member of our CoHE board. Talisha Adams is, let me get my notes all the way open here, Chief Admissions and Engagement Officer with the honors program, University Honors Program at the University of Tennessee. Hopefully I got that close to right. And I'll turn it over to them right after I say, as always, we'll record this session, which will go on the CoHE YouTube channel and be accessible through the CoHE website for anybody who was not able to make it today. So, you know, I guess that is your reminder to stay on your best behavior as we talk a bit about honors and admissions. So with that, I'll turn it right over to Pat.
Thank you, Jonathan. Let me pull up this PowerPoint here. I'm glad to be with you all. Thanks for the introduction. Talisha got a promotion, by the way, so you're gonna hear about that in a second. But good to be with you all. The title of our thing was just admissions and honors considering fit. Fit's an interesting word. I know sometimes it's a code word for excluding others, but we'll unpack that as we talk. Just a couple logistic things before we introduce ourselves. I've asked Jonathan to track when people raise hands or chat, and so he'll sort of DJ because while it's going to be a great hour together, I'm not going to be able to, I don't have some sort of wisdom that you all probably don't already have. What I want to do is sort of stimulate some conversation of things that we've been considering around admissions and hear some good dialogue from folks. One thing that I've learned from my time at CoHE is how distinctive each of our contexts are and how your honors program or honors college really fits your context. So that's part of what I'm going to talk about when I mention fit. So Jonathan will monitor as he started my introduction. And again, my name is Pat Akos, and I've been Executive Director of Honors at University of Tennessee for 3 years now. This is the start of my 3rd year, so somewhat of a novice. Before this, I was a faculty member at UNC Chapel Hill for 20 years. Came to UT to sort of reimagine our honors program, which has a little bit to do with this notion of fit. Let me pause for a second and have Dr. Adams introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Talisha Adams, and I'm also at UTK. I've been here for a little over 8 years now, but I've been with University Honors for 1.5 years. Prior to that, I served as the director of our First Generation Initiatives program on campus, and I'm knee-deep in the reimagining phase with Dr. Akos, and so we're excited to have some good dialogue. Feel free to put things in the chat, and I can also respond to some things in the chat when Akos is speaking, and we can just have a good conversation this evening. So looking forward to it.
Thanks, Talisha. And Dr. Adams Talisha knows well, much more about the logistics on some of our admissions things. So I'm hoping she'll fill those in as we talk about them. So I have really just 2 slides. So this first slide is going to be about what I think I know. And then the second slide are some things to consider. And I think after every bullet, I'll do a little bit of introduction of it, but I'll pause because I'm hoping that you all disagree, agree, share some other ideas around what I say, and we can make it super interactive throughout. So I'll get going here. And this is what I think I know, but I put we, so Talisha, forgive me, but what we know about honors college admissions. So I do want to start with just why honors colleges exist, because I think that's the framing we should start with when we think admissions. The way I understand it is, you know, we as institutions are attempting to draw the best and brightest students to our college or our institution. I know, especially in large land grant institutions, that's a role that we play. I think that's one that has a lot of resonance with all the folks on campus, especially administration. So I tend to think about that as part of what we're trying to accomplish. I believe that we offer programming, whether that's curriculum or co-curricular, to meet some unique needs. We're actually live in a division of student success where there's programming like academic support and first gen and veterans. And I believe we fit there because we're just offering a different kind of need. So I think all of us provide programming to meet some different needs that exist. And then I guess families, right? I think about students and families, why they come to honors. A lot of times I feel like students do it because they think they're supposed to, or they did in high school. But a lot of them are seeking benefits, different educational opportunities, or some readiness for grad school, I believe. So let me pause there, and any kind of different things or other reasons we might say why honors that we need to consider when we talk admissions.
I'll add a few, Pat. So just thinking about in our meetings with prospective students and families, they're always looking for a way to make our larger campus community feel smaller and more manageable. And our community, our honors community, gives them that opportunity to be surrounded by some similar-minded peers. They're also looking for ways to stand out when they think about their future graduate schools and medical school applications. And a lot of our scholars feel that the honors experience can help them stand out above their peers.
That's good, Talisha. Good. Others, reactions on that or anything you'd add to it?
I was just thinking on the institutional level, it's certainly a recruitment tool, as you note, and our institution at the University of New Hampshire recently transitioned from honors program to honors college. And that was sort of a bullet in the former president's strategic plan, one of whose priorities was to raise the overall academic level and reputation of the University of New Hampshire. And so moving to honors college status was a significant part of that.
Yeah, great. Academic reputation. That's one that, yeah, different way to say that too. That's great. Others?
While I'm looking for hands, I'll jump in and just say one thought that I think there's a tension where some people, not me, hear best and brightest and hear elitist. And so, you know, striking that balance is a bit of a challenge, at least here at Houston, but maybe in a lot of places. And so I think we play around with some different words to try to fight back on the elitist while still saying we're bringing a profile of students who might not otherwise choose to come to Houston. One of the phrases that I have come to use sometimes is academically motivated. So I don't know how much that adds, but that's one thought. And then I see Jan.
And
Yeah,
Jonathan, I was just one second. Just Jonathan, I was going to say, and we do not use the terminology best and brightest either. We talk about students with high potential as well and high achieving scholars. So
I would just add that you know, honors does, at least for our campus, help us recruit and yield students who may not ordinarily come to our institution. So the emphasis on honors is great, but again, we can't take everybody, but we're fortunate that still students get so much of a good look at the college or the university that they're happy to enroll anyway.
Great, Jan. Thank you. That's another one. And I just think as we move and we start talking further on admissions, let's keep all of these in mind because there are things we're trying to accomplish or needs we're trying to meet as we make decisions or make criteria or processes that we do. If I move to the second one, I think this may be where more folks have some opinions, but as I moved into the honor space, and this is true about any program you admit to the college, right? Unless you're an open access institution, even in my former life as a faculty member, we were selecting students to be a part of our program, our master's program. So, you know, by definition, it's not, whether you call it exclusionary or a different word, it is choosing a particular part of the applicants to be a part of your program. You know, traditionally, obviously, honors has lower acceptance rates than the traditional institution and rigorous reviews, and we'll talk about criteria in a second. But by definition, wouldn't you all agree honors is exclusionary?
Yeah.
I got one head nod. I got a couple head nods.
Oh, yes.
Any reactions to that? Because that usually comes across negatively. So that's what I'm just wondering.
Well, that's often a matter of when people are worried about elitism. In a lot of conversations that I've had with faculty, especially, but others who are worried about that, the first thing I say is, please remember that honor students are not necessarily a bunch of privileged students. They are a mirror of the cross-section of the overall population of undergraduate students. We have the same percentage of first gen, we have a little bit higher percentage of multicultural students, you know, same percentage of Pell eligible, trio scholars, that kind of thing. And I think a lot of people just need that bit of information, first of all. And then I also talk, mostly inspired and informed by our students here, about the fact that when students don't feel challenged, they wither and do not thrive and are feeling bored. And so I think we owe them, you talked about honors being in student life. It's not in student life where we are, but where I am, but it's the same principle. Like, if you're not giving that special group with its own special needs what they need as an institution, especially a state institution is supposed to serve everybody who comes, then you're not serving all of your students, right? It's just, they do have special needs. They have maybe, you know, more gold starriness in our culture than first gen students who aren't honor students, for example. But, you know, that's not to say that they don't deserve an education that challenges them.
Yeah, that's great. Great idea that in terms of the needs there, and too, and that we'll come back to the composition of the students that are there compared to your institution, because you highlighted that it may be more diverse in your situation. I'm not sure that's true. I know it's not true in our campus, but
Oh, is that
others
right?
on yeah. Others reactions on this notion? Yeah, go
I
ahead,
see
Jonathan.
Tommy's hand.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, thank you. One of the things that's helped us talk about admission requirements is to also have a robust internal transfer mechanism for students who may not, for whatever reason, make the cut on the front end first year student application. The conversation that I've had with those students sometimes is, you know, we want to set you up for success. Once you have demonstrated a semester's worth of, you know, quality, you know, what, you know, success, we want you back in this space. And it does kind of mollify the jarring discussion about you're not quite ready for the honors college experience at this point, based on things not an ACT, but perhaps it's advanced coursework, or the letters didn't come through well, or something. But having a robust internal transfer mechanism allows for a not now to be a maybe later. And I think that's an important motivator.
Great, Tommy. Thank you. Go ahead, Christian.
Thanks. I would echo what Tommy just said. The upper level admissions has always been an important aspect for me. And I think maybe this is getting to your next note, though, is that I always avoid the term elite and go with excellence. You know, most of, you know, we're all here public land grants or public universities and institutions. And, you know, there is generally an appreciation of excellence. And when we're holistic, it's not going to be just based upon the scores, not just based upon the grades, but it's still going to be looking for excellence. So those other rubrics, things like leadership, what's being articulated in the essays. As someone on this call once I heard say to a group of parents at my last institution, that, you know, our assessment may be subjective, but it's not capricious.
You
right?
were listening. Hey.
What's that, Rich?
You were listening.
I was listening. I remember so much of what you said, Rich. You know, and so I think that's really important. And if I can share one more anecdote, when I was at the board meeting for Penn State, when they appointed me, these three large men, and they were men, came up to me to congratulate me, but to bring challenge. And it turned out they were the farmers on Penn State's. You know, one guy stuck out his hand, and Boots Hetherington, and said, "You said the two words we most wanted to hear." I said, "Thank you." And he said, "No, 4-H and FFA," because I mentioned those. But then another guy immediately said, "I'm not sure I like this whole honors college thing. We're Penn State blue collar. It's not supposed to be about elitism." And I just said, it's not about elitism, it's about excellence. Do you want everybody on the football team, or do you want the best players on the football team? So, you know, there's a little bit of that we have to talk about when we talk with others, but I want to end back where Tommy began. which is, and those opportunities to work into it, to take more. Most of us can only take limited numbers on the front end, but students demonstrate their abilities, they work their way in. I think that's really, really important, especially in the land grant context.
Good. Thank you very much, Christian. Yeah, Talisha and I will be talking about current students because we've had some institutional limitations around that. Just let me keep going because Christian highlighted that next bullet. And this is just about what we look at for admissions, right? And obviously there's the academic credentials. And we all, I think, or most, in terms of holistic, look beyond the academic credentials, perhaps at very different things, or we look for very different things within those beyond academic credentials, whether that's leadership, what's in the essay, what questions we choose to ask in the essays, what we look for, what rubrics we assign and values we assign to what we're looking for, resumes, letters of recommendation, extracurricular participation, right? There's so many to consider there. This will lead us to this discussion about fit, though, is what aspects do you, in addition to academic credentials, what do you prioritize? What would be your first or second priority beyond academic credentials that are important for your program? So I'll just put that as an open question for folks to throw out a couple of things so we have that discussion.
I'll jump in real quick while I'm looking for hands and say, in addition to your list, which is a very good list, I think one of the things our group, our admissions folk are looking for are writing ability at a level that's good enough. I mean, it's hard because essays that they might submit have lots of help oftentimes, but with evidence that they can keep up, that's an unfair phrase, I can't think of a better phrase, keep up with the expectations that we have for the writing instruction that is really built into our curriculum. So you've got a good list. I would just add that one bit more. It's a kind of a tricky one, though.
Yeah, good. The ability to communicate well. How about others in terms of where priorities lie in terms of beyond academic credentials?
Glenison, I think you're.
I put in the chat just the desire to maximize education and related opportunities, as well as a wide range of life experiences that provides that fertile terrain for learning as much as possible, not just from the academic material, but from the community.
Yeah, my comment for this question is perhaps related to a thought I had earlier on when we were talking about why honors. I think that one thing that is valuable to the institution is the increased retention of students and graduation rates. Students who qualify for the Honors College and actually join do better than those who don't. And for parents, that would translate into just having a place where they belong, having a community and having peers that will encourage them to become the best version of themselves and grow. And so besides academic requirements for this question, a related thought is that for us, it's important to look for a willingness to contribute and to be part of a community and to have a certain amount of social and emotional maturity.
Thank you. That's really insightful. And also the previous comment, can you say a little bit more about how you assess that though? Like functionally, how do you assess that they want to contribute, that they have that maturity?
Again, that's subjective, but that would have, we would look for indications of their interest in whatever they say in their essays and the types of demonstrated leadership that they've had in their previous activities.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And Kathy, you mentioned about interest and extending there. Is that a similar way you assess about what they talk about, what they'll do with their honors education?
Well, in theory, yes. I think it's actually a little bit more complicated than that. When I work with a population where you can't assume that they've had the opportunity to express their interests, right? That requires resources. It requires a certain level of privilege and access to opportunities. And so this is a question I struggle with. I'm not sure we can always predict who's going to succeed based on their past, because their past may not have provided the opportunities that they need. And so I try to be more open-ended and listen to what they tell us. So if you tell me you're interested and we've got some evidence that you're following through with that, even if your life is more complicated. So it's about looking at diverse life experiences and how they feed into what they're telling us, and how we can help them experience that full educational experience and as many opportunities as possible.
Awesome.
Theoretically,
Yeah,
yes, but realistically, it's much harder.
Right. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Pat, there's another, Tommy had a follow-up comment that kind of links together what Kathy and Glennison were saying with what he said before. One of the things they're looking for at Mississippi State, Tommy says, is what having them be explicit about why Mississippi State honors program is something that excites them, and trying, I assume in all of what everybody's saying, trying to tease out those students who are genuinely taking advantages of the opportunities available to them. That's a nod towards what Kathy said, from those who have learned how to play the game to check the right boxes because they know it looks good. That's an ongoing challenge, I think.
Yeah, and I'll invite Talisha to comment after mine. We just did our training, and the two things that came up were assessing if they'd taken advantage of opportunities in high school that were available to them, relative to the available opportunities they've had. And the one that we also try to assess is, or ask, is how will you take advantage of your honors education at UT? The problem is it feels like an unfair question, because I'm a freshman and I'm a senior in high school. I haven't been there. I don't know enough to know how I'm going to take advantage of that. And so it feels unfair or hard to assess. But let me invite Talisha to kind of weigh in on some of this, and then others.
Yeah, I was definitely thinking about Tommy's comment in the chat, and I definitely agree. We do ask the question about why our particular honors program, and that helps us decipher from those students who maybe just copy and paste response across different institutions versus those who really want to be a part of our program. But we also challenge ourselves, like Kathy mentioned, because we think about an assets related issue, what students have counselors and our first gen students who may not have a family member to help them navigate these essay responses and things of that nature. So how do we kind of even that playing field, even on the essay responses? And that's a challenge that we think about in the review process as well.
Any others there before I move? I'll just finish this last bullet on here about what I think we know. It's just logistics. And I think it's fair to point out that when and how prospective students apply varies probably considerably. Just a notion from UT is they have to apply an early application process to be admitted. So that has to happen by, before Thanksgiving. And so that'll already limit the population. We tend to send invites out to people that apply that have certain academic credentials. That's also the invitation itself, even though they can apply else without an invitation, sort of limits who that is. So it's this whole, I think, balance for us about equity, about who gets apply and who should, who has access, how effective our admissions process is. And there is that just efficiency of what works. And this is where I go back to GPAs and test scores, is all the things you mentioned about leadership roles and wanting to be there and how they're going to take advantage of it takes time in admissions. We all know that. And that's, has a lot of labor to it, where the test scores and GPAs have some efficiency. So I believe there's this balance that we really have to achieve. Anything about logistics that's unique to your institution or you found helpful or limiting in terms of applications?
Well, I'm not sure if this is what you're thinking about, but one of the things that we have is a small scholars program within the Honors College that offers 4 years of special leadership training and activities, and also a generous scholarship. And for that, the admissions is a little different because once they are admitted to the honors college, they have a right to apply for that scholarship program.
Mm.
And for that, we've had to kind of build our own in conjunction with the admissions office, but build our own process that's sort of almost entirely in the honors. So we're instituting interviews this time around this year because the people who are making the selections have found it really challenging to get a sense, a good enough sense about whether a student is someone who will thrive as a Hamel Scholar, they're called, right? So it's just, it's going to be interesting to see. There's been a lot of work. It's meant, adjusting how we're going to be courting them and working on anti-melt stuff. We're going to be doing things much more individually now and involving one-on-one student shadowing for each scholar based on their interests, rather than a banquet where we invite their parents and everyone, and it's just a different kind of thing. So it's gonna be interesting. See how we do.
Yeah, you're referencing, I'll get Christian in a second, you're referencing, we also have two separate programs and one much more intense admissions
Right.
process with video submissions about, so we evaluate how they communicate and Zoom, and then they come on campus and a whole deal that Talisha might talk a little bit more about. But go ahead, Christian, in terms of if you have some things on logistics that might help think about too.
Well, it's the coordination. So we've got similar sorts of things here. We have a significant scholarship that is actually managed and decided by Central Enrollment Management and Scholarships Office, but they have to be in the Honors College. So it's taken a few years to get this worked out that, scholarships really needs to wait until we've made the decision that they are actually going to be in the Honors College before they go and give them the scholarship. So for a few years, we had students who came into honors. We have a fee. They didn't want to pay the fee, so they wanted to be out of honors, but they still wanted the scholarship. And so coordinating all of that, there's another logistical question down here about Common App. So we have the Common App. Bethany asked this. We have just a single essay in addition. So however, whatever route, there are 3 different ways they can apply to the university. If they want scholarships and or honors. So we did get ourselves unified on the same essay question every year, which they let me determine. Those students do have to do that one essay. I'm still not terribly happy with it. I would prefer a fuller picture of the student than what we really have. So I could go on more about all the limitations and the frustrations I have, but I would say that making sure you have a good relationship with enrollment management and scholarships, if you're not controlling all that yourself, figuring that communication channel out, building those relationships so that you can have those conversations before you run into the problems with students wanting one but not the other, and they almost always want to take the money. So we know who wins there.
As they should.
Talisha, go ahead, Jonathan.
Just pointing back to the conversation, there's been quite a bit of follow-up in the chat about Common App in terms of being fully embedded in it, or I think a number of people saying the challenges. So it might be worthwhile to talk a little bit about, bring a little bit more of the Common App discussion into the logistics discussion, if anybody wants to speak directly to that additionally.
Well, I can start there. I think for us, we do accept the Common App, but we also accept UT application as well. So depending on those 2 applications, the student information may look a little different. And so that is a challenge as well when we're reviewing. But thankfully, I mean, we have worked up a really good relationship with our enrollment management team, and we do have some streamlined communication with the students. So I think that's one advantage that we have at UT currently.
In Texas, another layer, there's also the Texas app.
Oh, I didn't know that, actually. Interesting.
I'm not in charge of our admissions process, so I'll defer to some of my colleagues across the state if they wanted to add anything there.
I just noticed in the chat there too, that someone talked about the amount of time you have for review of applications has definitely been an issue for us as well. And Talisha, you can say more about that, but that's been a challenge.
Yes, and I don't know if others do the same, but our honors admissions are included in their official acceptance letters to UT. So therefore we are on a very tight timeline. And I know I definitely echoed that sentiment in the chat that the reader timeline is very challenging, and it happens to happen around holidays. So when we're hiring external readers, we are having to be cognizant of their time off for different holidays as well. So.
One thought that I would add myself to all of this is I think a variable that affects how the logistics works is I think tied to, in essence, whether you're an institution of first choice in your state. So, you know, if you're Kentucky in Kentucky or Tennessee in Tennessee, it might look different than if you're UH or UNT in Texas. When the students are applying, you know, are they applying to what share of your students are applying to University of Houston as their first choice institution, and that's driving it? Oh yeah, now they find out about Honors College, or are they finding out about the Honors College and then at Houston, and then applying, and then finding out more about the university as a whole? And is it a first choice institution or kind of a backup? Well, all of that variable then I think also then affects to what degree, the earlier conversation that we were having, to what degree are they going to contribute to your honors community, or are they there simply because I'm now going to that institution and that's the checkbox that I want to do because that's what is appropriate to do things at the highest level, and I'm the kind of student who has always done, you know, every AP class that I can take, or, you know, checked all the best boxes from my maybe less mature viewpoint. Anyway.
Or I'm going to go to UT and I want the benefits of priority registration or something like that.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, lots of different reasons. And that's a pretty good segue if I could move us a little bit. So as I move to the next slide, I want you to consider all of these things we just talked about institutionally, like why honors, that, you know, we're selective, that there's this holistic aspect, and there's a lot of logistics that affect it. And I want to get to this notion of fit because I want us to think about, and this is where my internal struggle with our program is, and I'll try to articulate, but what does it mean? And, you know, what does our institution expect in terms of fit to the institution? And then how does that impact admissions? Are they looking for us to bring in the best and brightest? If they are, then fit is defined that way. Is there other expectations? And the one that where I'm struggling with the most is this program goals and fit. So I'll speak for you of UT and then I'll pause after this and others can respond to theirs. But we have two programs. One is a small 15-person cohort, fully funded, that's focused on leadership. So we're trying to accomplish and create leaders, especially in Tennessee. The other one, the newest program, is about complex problem solving. So we want students that are interested in helping solve problems, especially with colleagues from different disciplines. Okay, so I would think about this in two ways. One is right now we review the small one, the leadership one. We look for students that have demonstrated leadership capacity in high school in whatever way that is. We look at their videos and their essays and their interviews around their notions of leadership and what that is. Okay, so that makes sense, right? Because we want to take folks that have that capacity. But if it's about leadership and we're going to cultivate that, does it matter? Because we're really looking at the end of in terms of what we built for them or what change occurs in their leadership ability. Of course, we've already screened some of this on academic credentials, and there could be these awesome leaders that didn't meet the academic credentials. So that troubles me a lot. Our complex problem solving, again, we think that helping them critically think about problems, work with others, show creativity and solutions, we are going to look for those as outcomes of our program. Well, do we look for people that already have some of that capacity or demonstrated that interest, or does it matter? Do I just take the most talented students and hope to impact them with our program outcomes? So I'll pause in terms of fit, because it troubles me that whether it's efficiency or tradition, our academic credentials seem to filter first, and then we get to program kind of goals. And then should we filter there, or do we just believe we're going to impact people on that? I don't know if that's articulated well enough, but let me pause there and see if folks have reactions. And Talisha, you can add to that.
Well, the only thing I'm going to add, Pat, is, and how do you balance that with like your land grant mission and your in-state priorities and things of that nature? So, yeah.
Richard, I saw your hand.
About fit, just briefly. I mean, it does seem unproblematic if we're honors programs or institutions at any scale, right? Special purpose all the way up to overall institutions, and we've got a mission, then it's makes sense that we should be looking for fit, but fit can easily become kind of an oppressive notion.
Yeah.
And it can just be a way to, create closure in terms of who can present, with those qualities. And it gets back to the point that was just made, which is, are we looking for people who are, oftentimes I feel in admissions where we want people who are so awesome that they could skip college, right? and so it's just very hard. It's always been hard for me to figure out, meaning I haven't figured it out, the extent to which we want people who seem polished and ready to go versus, the diamond in the rough. But then, since everyone is potentially a diamond in the rough, especially at age 18, on what basis do we not take everyone?
Yeah.
I see Catherine's hand.
Yeah, I was just thinking, one thing that helps me think about this is the difference between our small leadership program, which takes about, depending on yield, 20 to 35 people every year, and the Honors College writ large, which takes about 300 a year, give or take. And so, for the leadership, one of the reasons they are instituting interviews this year for the Hamel Scholars Program is that you don't necessarily get a sense of the sort of leadership inclinations and abilities, nascent abilities, right? And that program really wants that, in addition to high achieving academics. And so, when I think about an honors student, it could be anything from a high achieving kid who also, whatever, designs software and stars in the school play and is head of the Senate or whatever, or it could be just like some genius physicist who's not going to be very social and who's not going to be on the student Senate or leading a club for outdoors or whatever, but he's going to just win the Nobel Prize one day. I mean, who knows? He's just so focused on his work, and that's a fine way to be an honor student in my view, because you don't have to, we do tend to prioritize that kind of what else besides your academics things. But, there are not just diamonds in the rough, but people who just aren't going to be that and who are phenomenal and who can be a good influence on those around them and all that. So I just think that when you talk about fit, I also feel suspicious about the word. It just feels like, what are we masking with that word? And we also have to take into account that these are, as you said, 18-year-olds for the most part, who are going to be pretty different in 4 years. So again, I think for me, it comes down to making sure we're offering people the challenge that they need in order to thrive as students. It's not a success for them to be in college if they're not expanding themselves, and you don't expand yourself and grow unless you're being challenged. And not everybody needs the honors experience to be challenged, which is fine, but if they do, it's good for them to get it. And again, I'm sorry, back on the thing about what, we're exclusive. Yeah, we don't admit everyone, but also we can't admit as many as we know could thrive, which is always what I tell people when I, one of you, I can't remember, I think it might have been Pat, tell people, hey, we have a January joins process. We have a transfer on-ramp. We invite you after you've done well, and we encourage you to just apply. We encourage all your faculty members to nominate you, if they think you'd thrive. So We totally want people to come in any way they can. But we can't offer to more students than we have capacity to serve with our courses and other opportunities. So.
I saw Deo's hand.
I think most of what I wanted to say has been covered by Rich and Catherine. Absolutely, the best student, based on their essay and the qualities that we say we're looking for, are not necessarily always the best qualified academically. And you can tell the well-resourced students who've had great opportunities, and the temptation is to take them because faculty want those students to be successful in their classroom. And yes, we have this faculty member who's complaining that he's not going to review applications for us anymore because the quality of students is diminished, and he's not impressed with the students we select. Yes, but academic success is not all that we're looking for, right? Part of it is to give them an opportunity to grow and to shine if they have other qualities that they bring to the table. So yeah, determining fit is really very icky.
That may be the best word I've heard to describe it. That's awesome. But, so if I pressed you all though, what were, in terms of, you just took traditional academic credentials and then the other aspects holistically, what you look for, what percentage does academic credentials determine for your admissions? Like what weights is it given? And I'll say functionally in our program, because of the logistics of timing and such, I think it's given a lot of priority.
Yep.
And traditionally maybe it has. The question is, should it? And so I just throw that out to you all of what percentage would you say of a decision is made based on academic credentials versus these other aspects? Kirsten.
So I quickly pulled up our slide. We have 100 points. Academic excellence is 40 possible points, so 40% of that. The essay gets read twice, so it's 18 and 18 for a total of 36 possible points. Engagement and involvement, 10 possible points. Leadership, 10 possible points. Awards and honors, 4 possible points. Now I say this knowing I had this slide because I hadn't been paying that much attention, and academic excellence was something like 10%. And I just thought, well, that's ridiculous. We're really making this statement and this claim. We want holistic and well-rounded, but we went back and looked, and we looked at GPA. We don't use the test score. Actually, University of Kentucky doesn't use it anymore either, but we collate all that. And we didn't have any ridiculous outliers in terms of academic performance. But it is one more and a measure that is less subjective, shall we say. We do try and really take into account, we utilize trained professionals within enrollment management who know the high schools, who look carefully at the transcripts. We often say this, that we don't want to hold a student responsible for AP curriculum that wasn't available at their school, right? The other thing I would add on this, by the way, is we dropped awards and honors down to 4 points because we just realized that told us nothing. It told us how clever they were at trying to figure out and get these awards and so forth. But lots of really great students are doing well academically, but they don't know how to play the game necessarily of getting awards and things on their high school transcript. So we really wanted to weight those things, their context and so forth. I'll add in that the essay is almost as much as academic excellence because we've put into this essay asking them to speak out of their personal experience and their lived experience. And if it sounds somewhat similar to the Supreme Court's ruling, that is intentional.
Thank you, Christian. Others, in terms of, especially if you're really different percentage-wise in terms of towards academic credentials or wherever you want to respond from here?
Right. So we also have 2 readers, and but we haven't assigned a point system in the same way. We ask them to rate the students on a scale and to rate them within context. And then we do the same thing. We look at high school record within the context of their high school so that we're not penalizing students who are not necessarily well-resourced, but we're also looking to see the broadness and the success that they've enjoyed in their high school context. That gives us some really good information to go by. And it works sort of because we have the flexibility to still go in and still be able to pluck that diamond in the rough that we see progression, but not necessarily the highest GPA. My issue, and it's becoming more of a concern, is the role of AI in all of these essays that we are reading that are fantastic and sound great. We've always known that students had help with their essays and sort of lived with what that means as far as equity is concerned. But I think with the advent of AI in this space, I'm trusting what I'm reading less and less, and I think that's an issue.
Can I throw in, that's exactly why we made our essay question very much about your personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
The first 20 I did last year, I immediately could tell 2 were AI. We used the same question this year because they just basically had bulleted definitions of Commonwealth. And but you could tell the students who maybe they got their definition by Googling or using ChatGPT, but then they had to start telling us about their lived experience, what it was like growing up in a holler, or what it was like being an African American in rural Kentucky, things of that nature. AI can't do that very well. So we're constantly playing the game, but that's been our approach to kind of make sure we're getting something genuine.
Thanks, Yal. Yeah, I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but we've actually taken criteria of evaluating writing ability. We've removed that just because of the trust and not sure about the ChatGPT. And I know it's problematic too, but we'd rather have the readers focus on something a little bit different. Hazel brought an interesting thing in the chat too about 2 pathways, one being auto admit exclusively on GPA and test scores into honors, something that we at UT piloted last year because we're doing some auto admissions on the campus as a whole. And then those that are not auto admitted, reading the essays and going through that application process. Just want to put that out there verbally, but others want to respond. I know we have about 10 minutes left. This notion of how important academic competence should be, and this notion of, are you looking for students that match the goals, the learning outcome goals of your program, or does that matter at all because you believe you can impact those through your program?
Pat, I have a question for you, because you just phrased it in a less, icky was for something else. It was about fit, icky way than fit seems. That there are certain students that would seem to benefit from the special programming that honors offers, and that might be demonstrated that they're seeking the kind of special programming that honors offers. And that's a little bit different than, an assessment of fit, even though if you defined it the right way, we could probably find equivalency between the two. Is that kind of a more acceptable way of thinking about fit?
I think so. I think one thing I would say, Jonathan, is we will advertise that this Haslam program we have is all about leadership. That don't apply to it if you don't want to engage in content about that, speakers about leadership, all the things, right? So my hope is fit is sort of determined by the student too, about what they apply to. And the same thing with, hey, this other academic minor is about complex problem solving, and you're going to be doing it in collaborative groups. So if you like working one-on-one on software development in your computer, it may not be the program for you. So I hope fit is sort of determined by the consumer in terms of what our program is trying to achieve. I guess the question becomes is then, do we look for folks that already have that competence, or are we just open to folks that have that interest and that we expect that will, impact that outcome?
That makes
so
sense.
fit might be coming in by how well we articulate what we're trying to accomplish or what we offer. and them, consumers making educated choices.
That makes sense.
This is a very fussy, I mean, very fraught thing, because our programs, even the largest of them, are small relative to the overall institution. And so in my more kind of cranky reactionary moments, I start worrying more about accepting the wrong student, right? And wrong could be they don't participate, they don't get good grades, whatever, right? It's probably more wrong on the subject of not taking advantage of honors. I'm getting to the point where sometimes I worry more about wasting our scarce resource on students who won't take full advantage of it, rather than, oh, I failed to take somebody who would, because we're not the only, game in town, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we fail to take somebody who ideally we would have taken, I think they'll still get a good outcome, right, in this big country of ours. But if I take the wrong person, then we've used 1 out of 300 of our slots on somebody who doesn't, not really good for the community, and the professors don't like them. So.
Pat, there's some really interesting comments about pathways. And I think we're talking about 2 separate things. One with Hazel, Tommy, and Talisha talking about basically, do you publicize auto admit? If you do some people through auto admit and others through the holistic, do you advertise that? And then Catherine asks, are there 2 paths where some people are a different definition of auto admit that they don't even need to apply, and then others are so they're invited into the honors program or college without application, and then the second path then would be to be able to be admitted, you would need to apply. So there's some kind of interesting dimensions happening in the chat that might be worth bringing out into verbal.
Yeah, I think so too. Just checking the time. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yep.
Yeah, if I may speak to that idea of auto admit, something that I was thinking about from early on, Pat, when you started talking about the percentage that we use that we think of for academics. What we do is inherently put some weight on academics because of the layering strategy for admissions. When we think about fit, I think it can feel icky if you're going to do something that is very rigid and that is very prescriptive, and that is going to exclude people who could be very contributive and be an important part of the community. But the layering that we do is, yes, we do have auto admits associated with certain scholarships that students will receive when they come to UNT. And then those who are doing a more traditional application, we also will look at academics. And when we see these stellar academic outcomes, then the examination of the extracurricular, the personal experience might be a little bit lighter, and it might be a straightforward process. And then we have some students who might be less stellar when it comes to the numbers, but then our 2 readers are going to get into the details of what experiences that student has had that might indicate the type of perseverance and character and just a diversity of experiences that will make them an important part of our community. So by having these different approaches, we are valuing academics, but we are also changing the weight to create the opportunity for other students, and that's certainly related to this idea that the pathway is not going to be the same for everyone, but the emphasis and what they bring to the table might not be the same either. We don't want to have a single profile of students who come and join the honors college.
That's really good. And I know we're getting close to time, Jonathan, but that's a nice ending point in terms of this notion of pathways. it seems to me too, is we should consider some analysis of what the learning outcomes look like at the end based on the pathways students came in, or the growth that occurs based on the pathways they came in. I heard someone mention, just auto admitting, even if they don't apply. I always thought the application was sort of a signal of I want to do this, but lots of different ways to go about that. I'll just end also too at UT. The one other complication that we think about is we're university honors. We have honors programs in all our colleges, or most of our colleges. So students that don't come into university honors, students that come into university honors can do a college level honors program. Students can not get into university honors and not do a college one, or any mixture there between. So I know some students don't get into don't get into the Grand Cook Challenge program in engineering because of their math test score, but they might get into university honors. So lots of other just considerations about pathways people can get into honors, but maybe not be our specific program because we're a program and not a college. But I'll stop talking there, Jonathan, because I know we're near the end.
Let me get everybody to thank Pat and Talisha for their time and leading this, I think, really fruitful conversation in terms of thinking through the dynamics. When we do it in isolation, we kind of often get stuck in our routines, and so it's good to pause every once in a while and think about the ethical and all of the other dimensions of why we do what we do. So appreciate both of you for leading the conversation. Let me end by advertising real quick. Our next All Access meeting is on December 12th. You'll see that in the CoHE Connect newsletter. Jennifer Lee Sputz will lead that conversation, thinking about how honor supports the needs of neurodivergent students. So I'm looking forward to the hearing and thinking about that. It's not something I've thought personally a lot about. So that'll be a learning experience for me. For those of you that are deans and directors, you'll also receive information, or you already have received information about the next deans and directors meeting for CoHE that's on November 14th. And Pat Mather of Penn State and William Nichols of Georgia State will be leading that, thinking about the dimensions of leadership for honors leaders within the university. So I hope to see the deans and directors at that meeting. Any other comments or questions for the good of the order?
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Well, thank you.